of does tobacco hip hop play a factor? If anything, I would say minimal. So, for example, part of the problem when we talk about crime in America is we don't put it in a historical context. We talk about today. So, like for example, everybody knows that homicide rates have gone up since the pandemic.
Sure.
But that's in comparison to what they were in 2018.
I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gon' tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gon' tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gon' tell me I'm not. I'm winning.
Let's go.
Nobody gon' tell me I'm not.
Both fists raised, we praise God for victory. The enemy can celebrate in the face of my enemy. The energy I used to hate no longer part of me. So pardon me for trusting the vengeance to the one who parts the sea. He paid the fee so I can go free. I call that bail money. Chasing back so you can be rich. I call that fail money. Sowing out so you can reap later. I call that well money. Wise with the talents he gave us. Yeah, that's how we coming. We ain't running, never back down. Even if we take the L, greater is the one that's in me. Then he that's in the world. We the first, cause we were last and now the roads flip. We the light and he keeps us on. The breaker never trips. We ain't running, never back down. Even if we take the L, greater is the one that's in me. Then he that's in the world. We the first, cause we were last. The roads are now flipped. We the light and he keeps us on. The breaker never trips.
Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gon' tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gon' tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me.
What up, y'all? Welcome back. This is the B.Honest podcast. As always, my name is Patience. I'm joined by my brothers, Mike and Denry the Overcomer. But we got a special guest this week, y'all. We got Professor X, also known as to us as Xavier. We hope that you guys will get to know him real soon. So we're just going to go around the room, let everybody introduce himself, man. So we're going to start with Mike. Mike, say what up to the people.
Yo, what's up? Be honest, family. We back. It's gonna get heavy today. I'm telling you.
For sure. Denry?
I mean, you always do it. You always introduce Mike.
I said we're going to go around the room.
Start here, go there, and then
what's up, Be Honest universe, Be Honest nation, Be Honest people. This is your man, Denry the Overcomer. It's an honor, and I'm here with my boy today, Professor X. So it's gonna be on. It's gonna be on. Great discussion today.
How y'all doing? Xavier, thank you for having me. I'm still getting used to this whole Brady Bunch looking setup right here. So, thank you guys for having me on. I got the Brady Bunch theme song in my head right now.
That's what's up, man. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, man. And to because your schedule is busy. So we gotta say thanks for you joining us, man.
We finally got another chaplain on with you now. The numbers are even now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, you know how we do. We up in here, man. So listen, all right. So tonight's topic, we're gonna be talking about black on black crime and black on black violence. So here's the thing. All of us are familiar because we're all professionals, and all of us have come from black backgrounds or inside that culture or context. So we understand or have a deeper understanding of what black on black violence looks like. And we also understand this, that interracial violence is not something new. However, throughout the course of my life, I'll speak for myself, black on black violence has been highlighted. And so I want to start by doing this. I'm going to start with Xavier, then we're going to go then Mike. When I say black on black violence, what comes to your mind?
Man, first thing that comes to my mind is what everybody sees in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody sees in the news. Everybody sees on Hollywood. You know, black folk killing each other. Light skin versus dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
Brown skin versus black skin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is just this territorial power that makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. All right, D.
In addition to what he's saying, like the political games, things that go on in office work where blacks are literally trying to sabotage other black people to get a higher position. The crab in the basket mentality, but specifically, like he's saying, what goes on in the streets, what we see, the crimes, the violence, gangs, all of that.
Mm-hmm. But D, thank you for adding that. That's another level that sometimes gets overlooked, is what happens in the workplace. And we don't understand, because when we think violence, we think of gun violence, knife violence, and, physical violence. But there's also a mental and emotional violence that takes place within the workplace that we perpetuate against each other. So thank you for adding that element. Mike, what comes to your mind?
Non-existent and a figment in the imagination of white supremacy.
Okay. All right. Now you gotta come on, man. You gotta expound upon.
Well, I thought we were just giving our quick little thing before we go back around.
No, I want you to expound, man.
You want me to expound?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So when you hear the statement "black on black," well, let's break that down in a couple of ways. So when you think about black, what does that actually mean? We talked about this many times on the B.Honest podcast about just what that signifies of a color. We know that in terms of race, that's a social construct. We're talking, most people identify themselves by regions, not by skin complexion. So, but for the purpose of this context, we'll use black for just this conversation. But that takes away most of the conversation once you remove the idea of black, because like we all talked about, Denry's from Jamaica, my family's from the deep South. Like we have two different cultural contexts. Just being brown, Arnell, you from the South. Just being brown doesn't make us all 100% the same always. But then when you think about violent crime, so pretty much the reason why I say it's a figment of the minds of white supremacy is because you typically hear the statement of black on black violence in response to us in our communities speaking against violence from other communities against us, particularly white people against black people. Then the quick response is, well, what about black on black crime? And we know, of course, the largest percentage of violence in black communities is by quote unquote other black people. But it's the same for white communities. The largest amount of crime experienced by white people are by other white people. But you never hear of white on white crime. Crime is about proximity. It's all about who you're closest to. And if we really want to talk about the crime in our communities, that's why there's a lot more that I want to say, but I want to give some other people a chance before I jump back in, because there's a lot more to break that thing down. But basically, one, you have to first, when you hear black on black violence, you have to first ask, what does black mean? Then you have to ask, how are you judging violence? Then you have to talk about how are you judging it in communities? And once you deconstruct a lot of that, the whole notion of black on black crime falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I track you, man. Anybody have?
Yeah. I gotta say something to that. Right. Check it. So I gotta go. I gotta go back. I gotta go back to Puerto Rico. Over there, I'm just me. Look, even when I went to Antigua, like somebody saw me and they were like, "Oh, he's black. He's one of us." Like I'm just me in the islands. I'm just me. It is stressful living in America. First of all, it's stressful because the minute I came here to the States from Puerto Rico, I was placed in a category. Mm-hmm. We love categories, whether it's racial or social economic, which social economic is actually above the racial tensions if you really break it down. And here's the thing. As a former police officer, 1% of the people I dealt with were black. 1%. Even though the population wasn't very high in that area, but it was still there. And I barely got any calls. Most of the people that were at each other's throats killing each other were white, Caucasian, whatever you want to call them. That was the predominant thing. But you never saw that on the news. You never saw the attorney, the high-powered attorney who chopped off his ex-wife and put her in suitcases and we go and find the body. You don't hear about that. You don't hear about the fact that in the suburbs, domestic abuse is high. But because it's verbal, it doesn't get reported in statistics. You don't hear about that, right? So there's a lot of things, and I got in trouble a lot in the police department because I brought a lot of these things to the forefront as not right, as not right. Do this, do that. I ain't doing that. Why? Because it's not right. My crews are serve and protect everybody equally, not one person above another. But you see, they have to meet certain quotas. And once you get to that brass, they like to meet that quota. I'm not saying it's like that in every state or every department, and that's the other thing. I don't want to sidetrack into policing, but when it comes to black on black crime, it's really something that is just society perpetuates that frame of mindset. Because if you put a camera in a black neighborhood, well, they're going to call it black on black crime. It's not really. It's person on person crime. It's person on person crime. If you put it in a white neighborhood, we're going to white on white crime. No, it's a person on person crime. So for me, I have to say the same thing. It's the fact that I don't really consider something being black on black crime because if the media focuses solely on the black neighborhoods or the hood, which is already socioeconomically at the bottom, well, naturally the spotlight's going to be there. Naturally, you're going to see what socioeconomic disparity does to people, what desperation does to people, what years of generational neurological framework of slavery and perpetuating cycle after cycle after cycle does to people. So it ain't black on black crime. It's historical, unprecedented, unrealized, neurological traumatic crime. It's trauma, generational trauma passed on and not being dealt with.
Absolutely, man. Powerful. Your point is well received and taken, man. And I appreciate that insight, man. D, what you think?
Both of them already start out heavy, hitting the bag heavy. I'm gonna try to bring a different perspective. In some ways, I agree and disagree, but I'm hearing what they're both saying, and I know how the media could portray things, how it can make stories one side, and this is another version of black and black crime. I mentioned it in the prelude earlier. Is that, for example, do you remember when, of course, when George Floyd passed? One of my colleagues, I was proud of this dude. He's actually an African-American professor, one of the top schools. They bought Fox News, bought him on. One of the few times I was watching Fox News. I just tried to get the perspective. Okay. CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I just want to hear what they have to say. Right? Okay. They bought him on, and they bought on. I was trying to get the name of that guy. Remember that politician Arnell I was asking you about? The black guy that the sellout, the dude that was said that blacks should pay back slave owners for their
Larry Elder.
I think
that dude.
Yeah.
And they had both of them on. And here's a white commentator in the middle. And had both of them on. And the two blacks are going at each other. You got this educated black professor, right, who teaches African American history, and then this politician or wannabe politician, and they're going back at each other, and the white person in the middle just.
Of course.
That's the black on black crime that I'm speaking generally. You know what I'm saying? Yes, obviously we hear about the gangs, but that's another. We'll talk more about that later on. But there's a reason there's gang violence. There's a reason where there's drug dealers taking out drug dealers. There's a reason why you only hear about that, like Xavier said. The cameras are mainly on our side. You see what I'm saying? I was down in a town, a predominantly white town today, and I was in the gas station. This Caucasian guy came to me and asked me all these questions, and basically he wanted help. I boarded him in. I said, okay, I'll get you some gas, right? Come to find out, I'm at the gas. I'm the cashier, who's a white lady. He's white. she's looking at me, and I'm noticing her face. And you know when somebody trying to send you a message, and so he darts out, and so I'm like, "Are you familiar with this guy?" She's like, "Yeah." And she tell basically, long story short, he's a hustler. That's what he does. That's what he does. You know, don't believe his stories, none of that. You see what I'm saying? But this is a predominantly white area. We do the same thing in our area, but you're not going to hear about that. You're not going to hear about white people hustling, con artists, and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm mixed. I'm not there yet. Maybe by the end of this show, Xavier and Mike will convince me that it's not there. But I still want to hear what y'all have to say. What about you, Arnell? What you think?
Well, I understand the construct that we live in America. That it's like Xavier said earlier. They've created these boxes, but I think Mike said it first. White supremacists have created these boxes, and these certain levels that they try to push everybody to and push everybody on, and I think it's basically done for the sake of control. See what I'm saying? Because if I can label you, I can control you. See what I'm saying? If I can put you inside of this box, if I can put you in this tier, then I know how to control you. See what I'm saying? And so I think that's why it was done anyway. So yes, it has been a construct that has continued to be perpetuated throughout society. So my next question is to you guys is this. All right. And Mike kind of hinted on it, but I want to ask you guys a little bit more. What part do you guys think music industry, tobacco industry, alcohol industry, and other industries play in perpetuating or even I would say adding to the violence within our communities?
Man, I call that the trinity of slavery in modern day society.
Okay.
I call it the trinity because, you know, you weaken the mind by supplying it with some kind of vice. Alcohol, black and milds. Man, I used to smoke them all the time.
Right.
And it's still, when I smell them, I'm like, whoo. You know?
Right. Take you back.
Made me, and them 40s look real good with the little, you know, dude coming down the side. Oh man, you thirsty? Yeah. But I've been sober now 13 years. I ain't touching that stuff. Right. But that's where you gravitate to. Because that is what the music is telling you to do. You know, if you remember in the, you know, and maybe, you know, whatever, we're dating ourselves or whatever you want to call it, but before the 90s and the 80s and everything, when hip hop was coming up, it sent a message. It sent a message. Maybe not always the best message, but most of the time there was a valid message of, hey, we're oppressed, we're rising up, we're pushing back. And now you got these you know, skittle teeth guys and these mumble jumbo whatever rappers that make no sense and throwing their monopoly money, which is that's probably what it is.
Right.
You know, and promoting this sense of let's drink, let's smoke, let's party, let's do it. We're lawless. We're taking what is ours, blah, 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 blah. But then at the end of the day, it perpetuates the incarceration rates, which if again, former law enforcement here, a lot of the jails are privately owned. Unless it's county jail, which is only minimum 1 year. Do the research on prisons. See, jail. I used to put people in jail. Minimum you get is 1 year in jail. But the goal, which I never did by the grace of God, I never sent anybody to prison. Because if I did not think it was right, I'm not gonna write a report that says otherwise. I don't care if I get fired. That's not how I operated, which made me a lot of enemies. Great. But prisons are privately owned. A lot of them are privately owned. And there's money to be made there. If you look at it systematically, there's been ways historically to keep Black people in some sense of slavery, from mental to physical to even spiritual. Some kind of, there's always in threes. Everything comes in threes, and it's biblical too, but everything comes in threes to keep the Black neighborhoods, the Black folk, some way, somehow divided and subdued, just enough to where they feel like they're speaking up, but not enough to where they can rise up and make a difference.
Okay. Mike, what do you think?
So, great points. However, I think the question jumps too far to the beginning without dealing
Why
with
always that go last
the
between
root
these two?
the root causes. So just in general, to the question, Arnell, of does tobacco hip hop play a factor? If anything, I would say minimal. So, for example, part of the problem when we talk about crime in America is we don't put it in a historical context. We talk about today. So, like, for example, everybody knows that homicide rates have gone up since the pandemic.
Sure.
But that's in comparison to what they were in 2018. If you expand it larger, historically, we're in historically one of the lowest crime rates in U.S. history. So in other words, crime was way more rampant in, for example, the 1960s and 70s when crime went up by 126%. So crime, by and large, this is why we all pushed back in the Get Tough movement and the war on drugs, because crime was not going up, crime was going down. But yet all of these policies came in that negatively affected our communities. So the real question, so when you look at that from that standpoint, then you can't blame hip hop and anything. So why is there so much crime, particularly in our communities? Well, Professor X kind of mentioned it, and when we talk about particularly our communities and Professor X, I explained with them already. I prefer not to use because we have labels, but I prefer not to describe the Black Americans as African American. I prefer the title American Descendants of Slavery, which speaks directly to our lineage versus African American. Africa's a continent, America's a country. It doesn't really fit our community. But speaking specifically for us, you have to start with the Genesis. You have to talk about 246 years of chattel slavery. That's 1619. Then you have the 1619, 1865. Then you have the 100 years of Jim and Jane Crow. You have all of these situations. So I teased it before. You have to look at the community. And sociologists have already made this connection starting as early as 1942 with a study in Chicago, in the University of Chicago, talking about comparing 21 cities and their crime rates and adjusting for different varying races, etc. And what sociologists have realized since then is that crime and poverty go hand in hand. You remove, and so just as some brief examples, every year they come out with the top 5 most dangerous cities to be in. Well, the top 2 are Detroit and St. Louis. Detroit is 78% ADOS, meaning Black American or Black, 78%. St. Louis is 48%. Well, what's also significant about those 2 cities? Detroit's poverty rate is 33%. St. Louis's poverty rate is 22%. Again, you see crime, you see high poverty, you see high crime. Now, some people will say, well, what about from a global standpoint? Okay, in terms of murder rate, and it's 61 murders to 100,000 people. El Salvador, it's arguably the most dangerous city to be in. Poverty rate is 33%, 26%, excuse me. So that high poverty, high crime. And so again, all of this study, and even if you want to look at it reverse and say, well, what about with white communities? Oswell County, Kentucky, they have is 98% white. They have 55 violent crimes. They have a D- rating in terms of crime in that county, and so it's 55 per 1,000, mostly in property theft. So we can see across the board, and again, we talking 50, 60 years of sociological studies showing that a community with no crime, a community with high poverty is a community with high crime. Now, the mental aspect of it in terms of what that does to a community is important to talk about what that does from a psychological standpoint. But if we don't begin with how the systems are created, then we just deal around the edges. So we have to start picking at these systems that are clearly designed to disadvantage one group over another group. So that is why we see the poverty up. But Freudian slip with a good one. That's why we see the crime in our communities. It's not just, oh, well, one black guy doesn't like another black guy, and so they fight. No, a lot of it is about necessity. Like the example I gave with Oswald County for the white community. Now, they don't have a bunch of quote unquote violent crimes in the sense of like murders, but they have like 51% of those are, or 31% of those are like property crimes. So people stealing from one another. Well, poor people steal. It's not because, and the only thing I'll say and kick it to Denry is too often there is a tendency to pathologize the behaviors within our communities. And if we begin with the influence of like hip hop, then that in a lot of ways creates the same problem where it says, well, see, this is the way they think. There's something inherently wrong with them. And so that's why they're violent. Ignoring, of course, that this community spent 400 years without resources, which is necessary for people to advance. So, there's more to say, but that's just one.
Very well said. Very well said. D, what do you think?
My only area, and like I said, I want to tread lightly because being a West Indian coming to the States, and like I shared before in the other podcast, we came with a different mindset. West Indians came to, America, different mindset. Hey, this is land of opportunity. Get it, go get it, grab it, snatch it. Don't come here and waste time. And so, I shared this before that, a lot of us came with the stereotyped thoughts of African Americans generally speaking, not all of us, that African Americans are lazy. Why? This is what was portrayed. They out here and they just not taking advantage. They're wasting their communities away. They're on that crack. All these ladies are on the welfare lines, and the list goes on and on. So this is why I want to be cautious and not go back into that kind of mentality. I'm saying? When we was in high school, I didn't even have that mentality because everybody I knew, like I shared, when I was in New York, we were all black. Not until I went to the South, did I know that, I'm not African American. I'm not ADOS. I'm a different kind of black.
That's right.
I guess the people watching the video looking at Xavier like, he must be a different kind of black then, And so, but the thing I do want to say, Mike, Xavier, and Arnell is, I get that. I definitely do get that. And I'm just listening back to Garvey and X and the last sermons of King. And the question I want to ask is, when do we take responsibility for our actions? Because yes, you are right. There is a post-traumatic stress behind it. There is the community, the poverty and all that. The situation is set up, but I'm just saying, like, there is also some accountabilities that I believe that we as Black people should say, you know what, we're going to step up. And I think this is why, because going back, I said, yes, we may not be putting guns to each other.
D, you're moving too far ahead in the show, man. Just
my bad.
He's skipping. He's skipping ahead. But we can answer that right now if you want to go there. But let the moderator moderate. Denry, stop skipping ahead.
All right. I'll review my I'm gonna bring my question. To ask that question is, go ahead, Arnell. Go ahead. It just made me lost my train of thought. Now, go ahead.
Good.
No, do you want me to repeat the question?
He's old. You got to repeat the question.
You want me to repeat
the question?
Okay.
Please.
All right. The question is, what
yes,
part?
I am old. I am, and I take it with honor.
So here's the question. In your opinion, what part does music, alcohol, tobacco, and other industries play in perpetuating and encouraging black-on-black violence?
Like I said, and that's once again, I didn't want to really play into that because here I am. I'm a West Indian. We have in Jamaica, we have the same kind of music, same kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it feeds into our community.
You're giving your opinion. We value
Give
your
opinion, brother. You ain't got to give no. Give your opinion, brother.
Mike, don't let me have to reach through the screen and choke you out real quick. In Jamaica, we have the same.
Really?
I don't understand.
We have the same.
We're literally talking about black-on-black violence.
The same,
really? Literally.
The same messages in our music. The same promotion of fashion and alcohol and so on. So, but Jamaica is a different arena than in America. So, okay, let me speak then. So we do have the hoods, the ghettos and stuff. We have areas in Jamaica. I mean, we have black politicians, all of that. So it does influence. You have artists will come out there for the hype and say they got this amount of guns or whatever the case may be and did this kind of crime. And then the real bad guys do it and they go to jail and prison. But the artists will get plaques and stuff like that for claiming that they made peace in the community. Remember when Game and 50 Cent came into Harlem and they did that whole thing and everybody was like, oh, look at them, they're making peace and stuff like that. But the people in the streets that are really doing the crimes, they get a prison sentence. Right. You see what I'm saying? So I believe it does have a lot to, and it goes back. When are we going to take responsibility? That's why I brought up the question. That's why. Sorry to jump ahead.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Okay, so I'll just give my 2 cents. I think that it goes back to something that Xavier mentioned earlier. Are these industries the cause of violence within our communities? No, but I think they exploit them for monetary gain.
Yeah,
see what I'm saying? Are they the cause? No, but I think they exploit them. All right. We talked about how music artists who are willing to disrespect women, perpetuate gun violence, perpetuate murders in the community, those guys get elevated. See what I'm saying? And I don't think that's by accident because up until recently, 99% of the music industries were owned by white men. See what I'm saying? If you track it all the way up to the top. Now they have black executives to do their work, to recruit the artists and stuff. But at the very top, it was owned by white men. So that's not an accident. See what I mean? Now, same thing with talk about tobacco industry, and Xavier, you pointed it out. You know, they use these things, they exploit these things, they use them, put them in our communities, and and if you look at it per capita, a lot of people have pointed it out. There are more liquor stores, places where you can buy all of these, things to get addicted to in Black communities, right? They're per capita, right? They are in every community, but there are a lot more there. So they're using to exploit. So I don't look at this as the cause, but I think that these companies put these things here to exploit and make money because they say, hey, these people, and it goes back to something that Xavier said and Mike highlighted it. Communities that have a lot of trauma, a lot of unresolved trauma, unresolved stress. They're looking for stress relievers. See what I'm saying? They're looking for a way to relieve that stress. And a lot of times, what do? They'll put it into music. unfortunately, a lot of times to relieve that stress, they'll turn to alcohol. A lot of times to relieve that stress, they'll turn to cigarettes, tobacco, weed, whatever the case may be. They're looking for stress relief to deal with that trauma. You see what I mean? So you have companies that are willing to exploit that, and they don't really care if it turns into violence or whatever. I don't think they really care about that. They're there because they say, hey, it's a business. This product sells a lot in this area, so this is where we're gonna concentrate our efforts in this area. And so that's the way it kind of goes, and so that's how I view it. So you guys have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. I just think this conversation is part of a consistent trope in American history, and particularly a trope that white supremacy plays upon. Because essentially what it's saying is, and it's part of what Denry's question is, and we'll get there, is personal accountability. You guys should stop making rap music, and that's why you'll kill each other. But again, if we look at the actual data that exists, violence was happening before hip hop started.
Yep.
So why? And violence is not higher now than it was in the days before hip hop. So if hip hop was the genesis, then what was it before? Because violence was worse in every community. America was inherently more violent 30 years ago than it has been now. It's just that we all have access to all of these videos so we can see it more. It's like when we all started seeing videos of black people getting killed in the hood, and we was and white media was so shocked. Oh, I can't believe this is happening. But we all knew that this was happening in our communities. We knew what was happening to Pookie and all. We knew what was happening, but it was new for them. So if you literally can't blame hip hop because you just don't have the data to blame hip hop. Because again, violence was worse. So if it's hip hop's fault, was it jazz's fault in the 20s and 30s? What was the blame then? So I think what it does is it's a clever scapegoat that white supremacy uses to absolve the responsibility of the social conditions we're in and say, well, it's all you guys' fault. You should do it. And again, it demonizes the victims.
Absolutely. I agree. I
think one thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
the prevalent term is white supremacy, which is true. As somebody that I don't know what it's like to be black in America, but then again, I know what it's like to be black in America.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it's like because I'm not dark enough, but I know what it's like because for somebody who's Caucasian will peg me as black or mixed or whatever, you know, and I hate it because it angers me. Because in the islands, there we spoke to Jamaica, we have one thing that I realized that America does not have. We have carnival. Yeah, carnival is a little crazy, a little bit, but its roots are to celebrate our freedom from slavery. We took back what's ours. Either get with us or get on your boats and get back where you came from. See, America has yet to feel liberated from the umbrella, there's this weight of white supremacy. You know, and it starts with a lack of education. Education is the one thing generationally that has been taken away from the communities of color. You keep them ignorant, keep them dumb. But the minute you give them education, the minute they get, as they say now, get woke, now it's a tool. And that's the thing that I've seen too. And I must say, I didn't know historically a lot of the things that black people in America went through. Or, ancestors, what was it again? Ancestors of...
ADOS, American
ADOS.
American
We're
descendants.
getting used to that. So one thing I did not know is how much they contributed to what America is today. People are like, I like my peanut butter and jelly. Hey, if you're a white supremacist, you can't eat no peanut butter. Don't touch it. Don't touch the peanut butter.
Right.
You know, there's so many little things that black people created
Yeah.
That if you take it all away, America ceases to exist. And that is what bothers me the most. Having grown up in Puerto Rico and growing up here, being given the tool to say, rise up, rise up. For me, it's like, ugh, why not just stand up and yell and shout and just, not loot, not break, but just take your degrees, take your education, take your brain and just take over. Because without us, there is no Caribbean, there is no America, there is nothing.
Nothing. That's right.
So either step in or get out.
Absolutely. Well said. D? D, we can't hear you, man. I don't know.
You know, when
okay, there you go. Never mind.
I've been, like I said, listening to speech.
Bad internet connection again.
Reading stuff from. Can you hear me now? All right. I've been listening to X and Malcolm X. Yeah, man. To our listeners out there, we may have to start a GoFundMe fund, for my computer. All right,
we gotta so help that man out. Help him out.
But anyway, I'll put the Cash App and the Zelle and all the other. You can still send food stamps. I'll take some food stamps too.
All donations will be accepted.
But anyway, but what I was saying was, listening to, I think people misunderstood what Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey were trying to say. The importance at that period for us, our communities, to take a hold. We just became free, at that time it was 40, 50, maybe 60 years prior, right? And freedom was still new to us, not knowing what that means. Also, we were the only group of people, and this also happened in the West Indies. That's why I can say we, even though it had different times when different countries were got independent from slavery, we were okay, so we got now our independence. What do we do with this? We got now, we're now in a country that our ancestors were not birthed in and so forth. We were born, all that stuff, raped, traumatized, brought over here, separated. What do we do? So Marcus Garvey and Malcolm and even Martin at the latter part of his time were trying to say, listen, let's regroup. Let's own our own. Let's establish our own government here, even in the United States, which was just, when I listened to that, I was like, yo, these guys were beyond visionaries. They're misunderstood. People thought, let's unite and become one with them. But what was the problem was we were the weaker vessel because we didn't have everything on our side put together. Here is, a white nation, white country who got laundry of money, right? Oil money. They got resources. They got other connections with other countries. But this particular group of people in these different countries in the Western Hemisphere are now newly established, and they're like, we want to integrate. But integrate to do what? Integrate to what? Just because we wanted rights? And so because of that, it put us now onto this, when you look into hey, master, even though I'm free, what can you do for us? What can you do for us? We would help. And so me personally, I feel like
we don't know what you feel like.
And people are looking at it and say, oh, well, what about what Martin was trying to say about coming together and be one, and what? Understand what Martin was trying to say. Yes, we have rights because the blacks in this country worked their behinds off, built this country. So we have a title to the deed of this country. We have a right to this country. So you're going to treat us with that respect. That's what Martin was saying. It was not like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Somebody need to get him some broadband. Stop using the dial-up.
That's right. He doing that dollar.
Exactly.
I don't know what he's doing.
You got mail.
Yeah.
You got mail. I don't know what they're doing, man.
Oh man, real talk, man, real talk.
Well, yo,
All right, well, listen, we go. Go ahead, Mike. You have something you want?
I want to respond to some of what Denry was saying, especially as it relates to Brother Malcolm and Dr. King. So one of Dr. King's last speeches, lesser known, I always posted every Dr. King Day, is he was in a sermon, he was preaching, and he was talking about all the allowances that the white peasantry or white people in America got as a result of the New Deal. And so he said, when we come to Washington, he said, we coming to get our check. Yeah. So, and I mentioned this book and I think our last show, Ms. Badaran, Color of Wealth. She talks about, I believe in her last chapter, but even throughout the book, she explains how, because that's kind of the underlying theme of the book, explains how often post-Reconstruction, there was this idea, and instituted by many different Nixon as well as Reagan, there was this idea that that Black people will create, ADOS will create this independent economic system. So basically, pushing for, and that's where Black banks came involved, and a lot of churches got involved, which was basically essentially, they'll create their own economic ecosystem apart from the American ecosystem, because that's essentially what it became. This is where redlining and all of these other predatory practices came about. So there, and why I'm mentioning it is that a lot of our leaders, Brother Malcolm, Marcus Garvey, others, bought into this idea that we would essentially create our own America within America. But what they quickly realized, and a lot of them shifted later on in their lives, is that's untenable in a country, one, that there's a majority, because we know, particularly if you just speak with banks, it's all about the securities that they have. Lending out money is where banks make their money. But if you don't have a lot of capital, what can you lend to? Then that's when you have to take on bad loans and etc. like that. And so that's why a lot of our banks faulted and they're not even in existence anymore. So what they realized was, you just don't have the capital. This is another way, a similar way of looking at it is most Black businesses. I think it's still over 90% are sole proprietorship. It means you don't have the economic floor to have employees. So we just lack the economic resources to create our own independent nation within America. That's the first part. But the second part is, why should we have to? Based on what X said, what Denry said, what we all said. We are the fabric of, particularly the ADOS community. We are the fabric of America. Absolutely. As X said, and it's so true. When you look at cotton, by 62, the end of the Civil War, it was the #1 import-export. America is not America without our Black bodies working for those 246 years and then being systematically locked out. So based on all of those realities, we can't, and when we're talking about the conditions of our community as it relates to crime, we cannot do this thing where we get into the, what's our accountability first? Accountability matters, but I would say in this way, accountability to what end? Us recognizing we've had an injustice and then going to those who are responsible for the injustice and holding them accountable, that accountability, or the accountability of, forget them, I'll just do it on my own. That works for individuals. That does not work for a collective.
No. Yeah. Thank you. Very well said, because that leads us right into the next question. Denry kind of jumped ahead, which was, whose responsibility is it for doing what we can to, because I don't know if there'll ever be a time, because as we know, we're men of faith, that we know that there's a spiritual component to why there's so much violence and crime in our world. And I don't think it'll ever be alleviated, until this world is done away with. All right. But as men of faith, we also understand we have a responsibility to be salt and light. So we have a responsibility to our community. So but it goes back to something Mike just said. It cannot be done individually. There's something that we have to do collectively. And when I say collectively, what I mean is it's something that the church can't do by themselves. They have to be willing to get out into society. You have to be willing to go out into the civil world. It's something that the civil world cannot do by themselves. You have to be willing to include people of faith and other communities to do it. It's something that Black people can't do by themselves. They have to be willing to include people from other communities. They have to be willing to include people from the Hispanic community, from Latino communities, people from white communities, people from Europe communities, you name it. If they're here on American soil, we have to be able to band together and say, listen, we're coming as a collective to make sure that we are all treated well. You see what I'm saying? We're all treated well, because I understand when you start talking about equal and all of that stuff, people look at that different, right? But we can all be treated well. We all can get together and say, listen, we're here to fight together to make sure we're all treated well. So Mike, you touched on it. Xavier, I want to hear your point to the question is, what do you look at it at? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that our communities are treated well, and that the violence that's being perpetuated, right, in our communities, with the stigma, right, the stigma of Black on Black violence doesn't continue to live on generation to generation? Like, whose responsibility is it to break that stigma?
I think the Bible says it best. Jesus said best. You start in Judea, you start in Jerusalem, you start in Jerusalem, then Judea, then the rest of the world. You got to start at your home. I got to educate my girls, and I do educate them as they're cognitively able to accept, because they're different ages. They have two things against them. They're women and they're of color. Two things. My thing is, once my parents, my dad is Black, and my mom, she's dead now, but she was white, but they're both Puerto Rican. So you see, once I accepted my obstacles living here, I then was able to crush through them. It was hard. It was very tough. It's extremely tough, because I got to have a level of education up here just so I can be of value. Whereas my Caucasian counterpart, all they need is an associate's degree, or maybe even a high school degree, and they can get the same position I have with the same pay, right? But my thing with that is, I'm responsible for my home. I'm responsible for every person that comes that God places in my path. Talk to every young person, every young Black person, and I hope people listen to this. Missing Black fathers in the home. We need to figure out how to reward that, because there's a lot of present fathers in the home. They're absent because of a system that creates separation. A system that by default is designed from slavery roots, where it's meant to take away the wife and the children and cast away the man. Okay? That system has not changed. The fabric of America has not changed. It's only evolved and taken a different shape of slavery. It has not changed. So it is up to me, because I cannot change the world. And we know, you already touched on that, Arnell, we know men of faith that there's only so much we can do, but it's up to me to talk to the youth, protect them. Like today, and Denry doesn't know this, but today I was talking to his son at Apple Valley, right? Now check this. I messaged him. I said, I was just joking and say, ha, 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 you know, when's your parents going to come pick you up? You know, man, your dad left you behind. Just joking around, you know, but I know his mom was picking him up. But you know what saddens me the most is the fact that when I left Apple Valley, I saw a police cruiser going past me towards Apple Valley. So I swooped around with my vehicle to see where that cruiser was going. Simply because I knew his son was just walking, not doing nothing, but he was just walking. But it's to the point where I got to look out for my friends' children. Because I used to be a cop. Because reality is that officer discretion is not often talked about. You know how many people I let go with a ticket for drug possession? Because legally I could. I didn't have to take them to jail. I don't care about no stupid quota. I don't care about no numbers. I care about justice. And that's what got me in trouble. So you see, it's up to me to educate about a system that not only continues to show and exacerbate the symptoms, and not even symptom management, I'm talking about just completely full-blown symptoms of slavery roots, continues to be the same trend. There is no cure because nobody wants to cure it. And even if they do, you get silenced when you try to. Tell me about it. Tell me how many people turned it back against me. The only one that felt alone in that entire department. So you see, it's up to me to educate my children that they may have the resources to put their chin up and say, you can say whatever, but I'm gonna get what's rightfully mine through hard work, not entitlement, through hard work and dedication. This is mine, and educate their brothers and sisters and be some sort of way intertwined in a fabric of unity within their own sphere. And hopefully that is a ripple effect that continues on generationally. That's my only prayer and hope.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Very well said. D, we're on to your question now. Who is responsible?
Well, I know who's responsible for this internet problem over here. This whole time, this is why I don't like incompetency of people. You know what I'm saying? This whole time, I asked them for the password and information. I'm going to edit this part out, but I got ranked. I asked them for the password and information the whole time.
So in other words, it was your fault.
Okay. Right? Yeah. The whole time I asked them for the information. It's right here in this desk. Everybody like, no, we don't know how to log in. We don't know how to log in. Anyway, moving on.
Pick up the phone. We're going to cut the internet out.
Yeah, right. They're going to cut the internet right now because you're running your mouth. Because you're running your mouth. They're going to cut that off. You're running your mouth.
Do me a favor, Arnell. Ask the question again so when I edit it, I'll fix that.
Don't edit nothing. Don't edit nothing. Don't edit nothing. Let the people know this was your. Don't edit nothing. No.
No, matter of fact, people need to know. Yeah.
Derry.
No, I know.
Derry.
Okay. They ain't letting you back.
You got mail.
Who is responsible? I think because one of the things is, and this is another side of Christianity that people don't talk about a lot. They talk about, turn the other cheek and so forth. Jesus explains to us the importance of we taking accountability for our own actions. You know what I'm saying? We can't judge. We don't know the motives of other people and so forth. So when I see a young person in the streets and so forth like that, of course, that's just how I was raised. I gotta put my hand to my pockets and stuff like that. Make sure, hey, but I also see potential for somebody successful. And that's why I love to speak at the high schools and talk to young people, no matter how they look. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I just saw one of my youth and I was like, yo, come back and play ball with us, man. We'd love to have you back on the team. You know what I'm saying? Because why? I see so much potential in them. And so we have to take, though, I believe, me personally, I was raised in Harlem, right? And yes, even though I'm West Indian, I was raised in Harlem. I had classmates that were doing their thing out there, whatever the case may be. I had the opportunity to do that too. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, yes, my upbringing or whatever had some impact to that. But I had other friends who went to church too, and they chose to do wrong. At the end of the day, each man has to take accountability for his own action. I would love for my people, the black race, the black people, the dark-skinned people, colored people of color, whatever you want to call us, to come together. And, but we've been trying to say come together and unite for what? How many decades now? And every time it's just like we crab in the basket mentality. And we try to say, oh, the white man did that to us. Yes, there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. But there's a point where you got to say, you know what, man? We're not going to get nothing from them. And if we get something, it's going to cost us. If we get a quarter from them, we're going to have to pay $2 later. So there's a time we have to say, you know what? Look into ourselves as a people of color, whether we English speaking or Spanish speaking or whatever, and say, yo, let's take ability for our own actions. Let's take accountability for our own actions. Let's make some changes in our areas. And that's me just personally, going from the 80s hip hop, like Xavier mentioned, when Nas was first talking about, how the black man was God and all that kind of mentality. Let's take accountability. Nobody likes to listen to that no more. You know what I'm saying? So obviously there's something going on. My wife, like I said, used to teach. She used to teach, and there was a time she loved it. After a while, she hated it because she felt like she was literally wasting her time. Because there was a system behind what was going on with these kids, and even the principal was against the kids. Like they spoiling them. They're not preparing them to make decisions. And so, but what? The principal's black. You see what I'm saying? And so there's an accountability we need to take for ourselves. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you could disagree with me, but we need to take accountability for our communities. We need to, I appreciate what Xavier did. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate him doing that. I didn't even know he did that. But that's what I'm talking about. When we step up and say, man, yo, let me swing back around. Just make sure, yo, that's not my son, but that's my son. Because that's my boy's son. You see what I'm saying? I go back to the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village. We are part of a village. African people, we were village, we were people of community. And so we need to take accountability for our actions. And that's where I get off my soapbox, that we need to take accountability for our actions.
I got a question. I got a question. Something that I don't think we talked about that I've seen in my work as a bereavement coordinator in the schools. When have we collectively given permission to our community to grieve?
True.
Given that space to properly grieve. I'm talking about, because here's my thing, culturally, whether we're from the West Indies, from Puerto Rico, Afro-Latino, however you want to frame it, we're all very expressive individuals, which it comes across as aggressive. But we're not. We're expressing ourselves because we've been suppressed for so long and put in a box and in a corner for so long. When we have something to say, we say it with all we got.
Yeah.
So when are we going to allow our communities to collectively grieve together, whatever that may look like? That's my question. When are we going to give permission to Black men, whether Latino or, again, the acronym that I cannot remember right now?
Right, ADOS.
There you go.
Don't worry. We
When
had to
are
get
we
used to
going to
it.
give to every single type of black individual in this country, especially men,
Yeah.
permission to grieve,
Yeah.
to
I think
have
it's a powerful
emotions?
question. I think that's a powerful question. And Xavier, I would love for us to take it on right now, but we don't got another hour. So, but we're going to bring it back. You teased it. So it's got to be a topic for a show
Right.
now. It's got to be a topic for our show.
Yeah, you got to come back to that. Yeah.
Because
you got to talk more of that. Yeah.
You work specifically as a bereavement coordinator. So I know you have a lot of insight and you can help connect the dots for some people. And I would love to be a part of that conversation because I work as a spiritual care coordinator, for a hospice company. I work alongside with our bereavement coordinating team, but that's your day to day. So I know you got a lot of insight. And so, man, we've got to do that topic real soon. And, but listen, I promised, in our pre-show that, Denry said,
Wait.
you had something you wanted to.
I wanted to add one more thing.
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
That time.
We'll do it.
I wanted to add one more thing with the accountability.
Okay.
Because that's your question, Patience, about who will be accountable, who will be responsible for this. And I, as everyone knows, or you all know, but Professor X doesn't know, I'm a huge proponent for reparations for ADOS, for the slavery, everything, Jim Crow, everything. And so typically when I've been talking about this for years, but typically when I'm asked about that, the accountability conversation naturally comes up because by demanding reparations, I'm holding the government, the U.S. government, accountable for the atrocities.
Rightfully so.
And typically, the accountability. What'd you say, Jimmy?
I said rightfully so. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so typically, the pushback is at times, well, how can you hold accountability? What about personal accountability? I always like to give an analogy.
Okay.
Let's say you had a home, and at your home you built the house, paid on the house, everything, and someone breaks into your house and steals everything out of it. And what comes to find out is your door is unlocked. Well, they say, well, this is your fault. Let's hold you accountable because you didn't lock the door. As opposed to saying, well, he still got my money. He ran down the block. Now expand that over generations when you're constantly being taken from. And then someone says to you, well, man, at some point, when are you going to hold yourself accountable for not locking the door? But wait a minute, he's a thief. We're allowing the thief to go away. So oftentimes, I always tend to give those examples just to show people it is not to say that we're not accountable on an individual level. But when we have this conversation, quote unquote, black on black crime, now we're talking about a systemic and communal issue. And if we're looking at it from a community perspective, then that means it's going to have to work from a community standpoint, not individuals just trying to do the right thing. It's going to have to be where we put pressure to bear on the system that created the environment. And to close, Denry, with your crab in a barrel mentality, and a lot of people talk about it. I think I shared it before. The analogy, we only stop at one point. We don't extend it. First thing with a crab in a barrel, we always talk about, well, the crabs are climbing on top of each other. And we use that as a frame of reference for the black community, ADOS community. But you have to look at the analogy and extend it out. So first question you should ask is, why are the crabs in a barrel? Crabs don't belong in barrels, they belong in the sea. That's the first question. That's the main question to ask. But then in addition to that, when crabs climbing over each other to climb back out, no other crab goes back into the barrel to get anyone out. They go to get cooked. So if we think about things from an individual perspective of the crabs climbing and one crab gets out, there's a high likelihood the crab is going to get cooked. But now how about we find some stronger crab to get all of the crabs out of the barrel, put them back in the sea where they belong? That's kind of what we have to do. We have to start with the systems that exist. Otherwise, we'll just keep climbing, and none of us will ever get out.
Yeah, I'm looking at my crab in my tech aquarium right now.
Just leave them in there. See, Denry wanted to climb out.
That hurts somebody, man. You're going to have to put some Limacol on that. Brought to you by Limacol. You know about
That's
that,
our commercial.
You know about that, Denry?
We're not paying for their sponsorship. All right? We're not paying for their
that hurts somebody.
Edit that out. They ain't giving us no money.
Here's our pay.
I see that. We still, this is an onerous conversation. And once again, Be Honest Nation, we and Universe, we got another conversation that's there's still more to it. We'll bring what Mike is bringing to perspective. There's still more to it. However, there's still the characteristic traits of the character crab in the basket. We do pull each other down. It is a known fact, but he bringing the point. Why are we doing it? Mm-hmm. And why are we in the box, which is something I never thought about all my hundreds of years on this earth. You know what I'm saying? So, but Arnell, take us out, man.
All right, yo.
But what I didn't want us to do it, and I'm glad that we didn't do it in this show, is just like I was saying what Fox News and although they love to do, they put two black people against each other and just live TV. And I'm glad none of us did. Right. We disagreed. There's a few little disagreements or whatever, but it was more of like a building on each other rather than a tearing each other down.
Exactly. And it's okay to disagree. But we can
Somebody's
do it.
With your mic,
we can do it respectfully.
You sound really
we can do it respectfully.
They sound good.
Yeah, he sounds great to everyone but you. So
it's your internet.
I gotta
go get your new AOL disc.
Now I gotta go back.
Your new AOL disc.
You sound all faint, like soft
people
in Atlanta.
Hey man, I give you a phone cord, man. I give you a phone cord. I got you. Tell your people to stop picking up the phone when you're trying to use the internet.
That's what it is. They keep messing up his connection.
All right,
take us out, man. Take us out.
Did you have a question before something like that? Did you have a question or something like that?
Oh, Professor X got to close us out with his teaser. The thing about Halloween.
So I want to ask you all. You want me to do it, Arnell?
Yeah.
All right. We're in the last week of October, and y'all watching this on Friday, and I'm sure everybody's out there getting their cotton candy, getting their candy cones and all that, and their whatever their costume for their kids. But what are the three of you all doing for Halloween? What's y'all Halloween plan?
Well, go right to Professor X, man. You don't try to tease it with us. He got the thing, man.
See,
okay.
There you go.
My fault, brother.
This is not Fox News. This is not Fox News. There you go,
brother. I'm sorry, man. My fault, brother. I'm not celebrating Halloween. We do not celebrate Halloween in my family. I did grow up in a non-religious background, so I'm an American kid in every sense of the word. Halloween was a big deal for us. We did all the time up until childhood, teenage, even adult years. I didn't become a Christian until I became an adult. So Halloween was a big thing for me. Me and my wife, when we were boyfriend and girlfriend, we had many arguments about why we could still do Halloween and all that. But I eventually got to the point where we said no. From a spiritual perspective, no. It's demonic, and that's our stance.
So before you were a Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, you were atheist?
Yes.
Okay. Arnell, what about you? What y'all doing for Halloween?
Nah, we not doing anything. Like I said, I'm not gonna go out of my way to be disrespectful to people, but I grew up in the church, and as I grew up, I was told, okay, we just don't do it, so we didn't do it. As I became an adult, developed my own relationship with the Lord and grew in my faith, I understood that there was a deeper spiritual component that I feel personally is not of God, and so I don't associate or celebrate, and I teach my daughter accordingly.
So you're not gonna do like a Christianize it and have like Christians dress up as your favorite Bible character?
Listen, I'm not gonna do that. But if churches choose to do that, then that's their choice. Right. I'm not gonna do that.
X-Man, Professor X, thoughts? It's a teaser now. This is a teaser. Don't give us the full load. Go ahead.
I hate Halloween with a passion. I hate it with every fiber of my being. Mm-hmm. Because I was a Satanist for a very long time.
Oh. Let's leave it right there. Let's leave it right there. I want to leave it right there.
Let's let that sit. Just let that sit. Because that blew my mind.
You gotta come back on the show.
Wait.
Whoa. You gotta come back on the show.
I wasn't
next week.
I wasn't what you see in school, on TV with this dark goth look, because real Satanists look like you and me.
Wow.
We identified each other differently, and we knew what signals to give and not to give. And so, yeah, there's a lot
Stay right there.
People don't
Stay
know.
right there. So next week, we got to get him back next week. You got to be on the show.
Yo,
yeah,
we got to get him back next week.
We got to
We got
next
to,
week.
yo.
We got to finish this conversation. And like
Right.
Arnell was saying, we're not trying to make fun of, make anybody feel uncomfortable, but there is a
I'm
truth
gonna make you
that
feel
you need to
comfortable.
know.
I'm
There's
gonna
a
make you feel
truth that
comfortable.
you need to know. That's gonna make you feel uncomfortable.
Ain't no hay rides. Ain't no hay rides.
Ain't no hay rides. Yeah.
Is there hay rides in heaven? Huh? Did Peter dress up with a mask? Huh? Last time I checked, pumpkins belong in a soup, in a stew. not right in the side, not right in the side of front of the house.
So it's not okay to put Jesus on the front of the pumpkin out in the front,
For what? That belong in the stew. Did Jesus talk about pumpkins or olives? Olives.
Amen. Don't give them everything. Don't give them everything.
Don't give them everything, man.
Don't give them everything.
Hey, keep the shotgun.
Like that's it. I ain't even giving you nothing right now.
So, oh my goodness. No, we got to do this Monday.
Stay tuned.
We got to do this Monday.
Y'all got to stay tuned next week. We're going to bring perspective. I want to hear what Mike raised as an atheist, how his thoughts about Halloween, myself, all of us. But definitely want to hear Professor X's thoughts. Yeah. So Be Honest Universe, thank you for tuning in. Thanks, Arnell, for hosting. Sorry for the internet, but hey, this such is life. We live in post-COVID era. We don't do none of that cleanup. You're gonna get
Don't blame COVID. Don't blame COVID.
That's right. Don't blame COVID. Everybody internet was.
I'm gonna pay my AOL bill.
Internet was working before COVID. Don't blame COVID.
Exactly. Nah.
I'm gonna pay my AOL bill. All right. But this is Denry the Overcomer on behalf of Mike, on behalf of Patience, and on behalf of our guest, our homeboy, Professor X. Be honest to God. Be honest to your neighbor, and most of all, what do we say, folks?
Be honest with yourself.
Be honest to yourself. Xavier's lost on that one.
What you say?
Peace.
How was he supposed to know that?
I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Yeah. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Yeah. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm not. I'm winning. Can't tell me I'm not. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm not. I'm winning.
Let's go. Both fists raised, we praise God for victory. The enemy can celebrate in the face of my enemy. The energy I used to hate no longer part of me. So pardon me for trusting the vengeance to the one who parts the sea. He paid the fee so I can go free. I call that bail money. Chasing back so you can be rich. I call that fail money. Sowing out so you can reap later. I call that well money. Wise with the talents he gave us. Yeah, that's how we coming. We ain't running, never back down. Even if we take the L, greater is the one that's in me. Then he that's in the world. We the first, cause we were last and now the roads flip. We the light and he keeps us on. The breaker never trip. We ain't running, never back down. Even if we take the L, greater is the one that's in me. Then he that's in the world. We the first, cause we were last. The roads are now flipped. We the light and he keeps us on. The breaker never trips.
I'm winning. Can't tell me